Good evening and welcome to the Thursday, November 9th, 2023 Finance Committee meeting. With us this evening, committee members present, Councilors Boschman, Van Hazinga, Zarella, and Squalia. We will begin with an advisement that FATV is conducting an audio and video recording of this meeting for public broadcast. I ask that anyone in the audience who is recording this meeting to please identify themselves to the record now by standing and stating your name and city of residence. Seeing none from the public, at this time I ask that all electronic devices be placed into silent mode. Public comment for 2 minutes. There is no one here from the public wishing to speak, no one online as well. So we will move on to the agenda. 24723, in order that the City of Fitchburg hereby approves the expenditure of grant funds from the Mass DEP FY24 Sustainable Material Recovery Recycling Program, Recycling Dividends Fund in the approximate amount of $30,000 for the purpose of said grant, which is to implement specific programs and policies to maximize reuse, recycling, and waste reduction of curbside and drop-off disposal in Fitchburg. Director Curry.
Good evening, councilors. This is an annual grant, and it's based on our disposal program and our curbside collection program. Some of the things that this program has funded over the years, replacement recycling barrels for the parks and our residential curbside program, as well as our new sticker and scanner program at the landfill for landfill permitting. More importantly, this program now supports a mattress disposal program. So I'm pleased to announce that we have a recent brand new contract with Tough Stuff Recycling, which is on 145 Authority Drive. Fortunately, we have a mattress recycling facility right in here in Fitchburg. So we were able to get a contract with them with these grant funds, and now mattresses have a reduced disposal cost. It's still not free, but it's much reduced. And now there is a curbside collection option, which is now down to $33. So hopefully it's a little bit more affordable for residents to do the right thing.
Councilor Van Hazinga?
Yeah, so I'd like to just touch on the mattresses a bit, because that's a constant request I hear is how do I get rid of this? And what is the process for someone setting up a curbside pickup? So I know it used to be through the Board of Health website. You could schedule a pickup. Is it still there, or do you go to Tough Stuff?
It is still there. If you wish to bring your, actually all the options are lined up with hot links right on our webpage. You can also call the office and we'll walk you through it. But it's on open.gov. You can actually hit a hot link right to Tough Stuff, pay your $22, and drop it off with a permit from us.
Okay.
You can also schedule a collection. That's $33. You can set that up right on the website. Unfortunately, the contract states we need to have 20. So what we do is we hand out bags to bag up the mattresses so folks can store them. If you're able to store them and save a few bucks, we'll give you a bag free of charge and set up the curbside option. And then there is the landfill option too, but obviously we can't dispose of it in the landfill, so we emphasize using Tough Stuff Recycling.
Okay, so that's great. So you can go to the Board of Health website. You can print out a coupon, get a reduced rate if you bring it there, or you can
bring your own permit.
Bring your own permit, or they can schedule it and they'll come to your curb and pick it up. You just got to get it out the door, right?
Correct.
All right, great. Thank you. That's all.
Councilor Boschman.
Steve, now, you say you have to have a minimum of 20 for them to come around and pick them up.
That's correct.
Well, we live in Fitchburg, and I'm already driving up the streets, and I see them on the curbs already.
Correct. We do have a program for those as well.
Huh?
We do have a program for those as well.
Yeah, but you do?
Yes.
What's that program?
Well, it's not something I'd love to advertise, but through this program, it pays for every week I give Tough Stuff a list, and they will go around the city and collect the illegal dumped mattresses.
All right.
and this grant will pay for that.
I want to make one thing clear to all the councils and to the people. When you say free, there's nothing free. Somebody's paying somewhere. So we get nothing for free. Somebody is paying somewhere. Personally, I think we should be emphasizing either take them down or keep them in your yard until you see 20 of them and then call up. You know, I don't want to see them I don't want to be going down Kimball Road and going down the bank and picking them up. I'm 73 years old. Those days are done. The Nashway River is all done for me too. And a lot of people don't want to pick them up because of bed bugs. And they are there.
Another purpose for the bag.
Okay, so, and the other thing, when we're talking about recycling, how can people on the trash recycling, this is part of that, right, Mr. Chair? How can we improve that so we won't get charged for Essex garbage when we're dumping illegal garbage because we're contaminated the good stuff with the bad stuff? I'm going to give you my example because we can't talk about anybody else, so me. I own an apartment house. I tell my tenants all the time, week after week after week, no plastic bags in the recycling. What do? Find plastic bags in the recycling. How can we start collecting that so we can be better at what we're doing, so we can look better for the landfill and look better for us, so we can get more money from the state because they look at us, we're A1.
Education and enforcement.
Huh?
Education and enforcement.
Education and enforcement.
Yeah, so this program will support areas that have the worst contamination. So we do work with our hauler to find out the locations or the routes, trash routes or the recycling routes that have the worst contamination. Excuse me, and we'll actually walk the streets and open barrels and let them know that by attaching a tag that their recycling is going to be rejected. And it's also education, constant education.
Okay, all right.
We've had billboards in the past with this money, but those billboards are expensive.
I prefer not to, people don't read billboards. I wish you have a nice, I've been not say because I get charged for sexual harassment. So I've been not say that either. But anyway, all right. I'm more concerned about the mattresses. I'm glad you did that. I think you should recommend Authority Drivers right up the street. Is that open 7 days a week or 6 days a week?
Tough Stuff has some limited hours if you plan on bringing it there. I assume that's what you're asking.
Right.
Yeah. I would check with the hours. They do change, so but they encourage looking at their website, or you can call them. But I don't want to advertise their hours because they changed a lot in the last few months.
Okay, all right, but you can, if you call up, you can deliver it. I think that's the best way to go. Pay somebody to pick it up, like a guy like me, and bring it up there. All right, thank you, Steve. Appreciate it.
Certainly.
Council Squalia.
Thank you. Thank you. You touched on a couple of questions that I had, but I'm not fully sure. What did you mean by the minimum of 20? Is that for like some sort of bulk rate pickup?
So if a resident schedules a pickup or a collection with us, they do not go collect them until we've gathered 20 mattresses from.
So that's a discount rate through us for $33?
Yes.
So if you go to the Tough Stuff website and you do a pay, it's
You can do it through our website.
for $33 and you have to wait till there's 20?
Yes.
Or you can just go to the Tough Stuff website and it's like $50 and they'll schedule a pickup?
Correct.
Okay. So when it comes to the bag, the mattress bag, if it needs to be outside for a period of time or there's a potential for contamination, the Board of Health in Fitchburg will provide that bag for free.
That's correct.
Excellent.
Nothing
Okay.
for free.
And
Things are paid by this grant.
paid through the grant,
Yep.
paid by someone.
Paid by
Someone's
some-
paying for it.
Thank you.
Right. And I just want to add that the new barcode sticker I've gotten a lot of people saying that they love that, and because they anticipate not having to replace it every year with a new sticker.
That's the idea, is saves a little money, and then the grant is able to cover the process and all the expenses associated with it, so,
I've got numerous positive comments on that, so great job.
thank you.
President Zarella.
Thank you. On the subject of the stickers, this is very slightly off topic, and I apologize. Anyone who wants to call a point of order, go right ahead. But on the subject of the stickers, have there been any ideas on how to enable people to get landfill stickers for vehicles that are used for domestic purposes but that may have commercial plates?
Case-by-case basis.
Okay.
We have plenty of contractors that are out there that are able to, we've loosened the regulations there, they're able to get a permit. They will be heavily scrutinized at the landfill to make sure that the debris they're bringing is not commercial, and that it's household items. But yes, we've loosened the regulations so that most everybody can get a residential dump sticker.
Excellent. Thank you.
Council Boschman.
You're saying everyone, even the guy that owns apartment houses like me, I can
Yes.
get a sticker for my single-family home?
And you will have to, if you have multiple buildings, you would have to pay $20 per unit over and above the unit you live in.
Okay. Oh, all right. I just want to make sure, because when I heard him say that, I was going to go down and get a sticker.
Move to approve 247-23.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve 247-23. There are no discussions. I will take this on unanimous consent. No objections. I will take this on unanimous consent. Seeing none, it passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilors.
248-23, order that the City of Fitchburg hereby approves the expenditure of grant funds from the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection Sewage Notification Assistance Grant Program in the approximate amount of $71,800.02, the purpose of which is to support municipalities in meeting the requirement to promote public awareness of sewage pollution during overflow events. Commissioner Erickson.
Thank you, councilors. This is a grant to help support one of the new notification requirements that the state has for combined sewage systems. So in Fitchburg, we have a combined sewer system, and occasionally there are combined sewer overflows. As you're all probably aware, we're under a consent decree to separate out these combined sewer systems, but that won't be completed until roughly the year 2030. In the meantime, we're forced into a notification process outlined by the state. Luckily, because it is an unfunded mandate, they have offered some assistance for funding through this grant program. So we've already implemented this system. These grant funds will be retroactively applied to the expenses we've already incurred. Questions?
Council Zarella.
Thank you. So what exactly does this notification requirement or awareness requirement entail?
So when we have an overflow event where we discharge sewage to the river, either at the treatment plant itself when the plant goes into bypass mode, or at one of our regulator points throughout the collection system, it triggers a notification process through the city's website. So anyone that's signed up for those alerts will get an email notification about the event, where it is located, basically which regulator it happens at, and the approximate volume. And then that's also reported to the DEP and the EPA.
Okay.
So I've actually signed up myself with my city work phone, so I get text notifications whenever that happens. So any constituent is able to sign up for the same notifications by going to the city's website. I believe it's under the Alert Center. So it shows which regulators are in bypass mode, shows if the plant is in bypass mode, so people can be more aware of these types of discharges to the river.
Okay. Thank you.
Make a motion, we accept.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to accept 248-23. If there are no objections, I will take this on unanimous consent. Seeing none, it passes. Next, we have 24923, order that the City of Fitchburg hereby approves the expenditure of grant funds from the Massachusetts Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs Dam and Seawall Repair or Removal Grant Program in the approximate amount of $76,800, the purpose of which is to complete an evaluation of the dam stability and ongoing seepage issues, which will yield critical design information for future design and permitting phases. Commissioner.
This is a grant award from the grant program that was mentioned in the letter for Scott Reservoir Dam. This is a dam that's used as a backup water supply for the city of Fitchburg. The dam is quite old, in excess of 100 years. I don't have the exact date of construction on the top of my head, but there's been seepage issues with the dam since it was constructed back in the early 1900s. And this is funding to begin an evaluation to figure out what the problem is and possible corrective actions. It's a backup water supply, as I mentioned, so it's not a candidate for dam removal, but this process will help inform future design and permitting efforts to correct the seepage and stability issues at this dam so that it can be used as a backup water supply long into the future.
Motion to approve?
Make a motion, we accept.
Motion made and seconded to approve 25023. If there are no objections, it is approved. Thank you. Next, we move on to 25023. Order that the City of Fitchburg hereby approves the expenditure of funds from the Massachusetts Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs Municipality Vulnerability Preparedness Program Action Grant for the Blue-Green Downtown Fitchburg Climate Adaptation Plan Project in the approximate amount of $365,000 for the purpose of said grant, which is to define causes of flooding and will result in mitigation recommendations while also addressing heat impacts and ensuring that development and infrastructure improvements will be climate smart. Commissioner.
So this is a grant. It's the third grant award underneath the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Grant Program through the EEA that the city's been awarded this fiscal year. And this will focus on identifying reasons for flooding issues downtown and informing future design efforts as to solutions to address those flooding issues. So if you recall, Finance Committee meeting a month or two ago, we talked about two other MVP grant awards that the city received, and this is the third underneath this grant program. All three grant awards total more than $1 million, so it's very impressive the city's actually gone out and gotten that much money, considering that the total awards statewide were roughly $31 million. So this represents a pretty large portion of that being given directly to Fitchburg. We've also received a grant for the design, beginning the design of improvements to Moran Square. And as you all know, that's one of the primary areas of flooding downtown. So the hope is that this grant effort will help inform some of those designs to move forward with a climate smart design for that area of the downtown.
Councilor Boschman.
I'm in favor of this, but I just want to point out to my council on the right and some of you, if you recall, Nod Street, Snow Street, Willow Street, Highland Ave, I think part of Highland Ave, you used to all have houses up there. Now there's asphalt parking lots. So the water doesn't go anywhere, so this is why you got vast majority of water coming, I believe, I'm not an engineer, but I believe all that water is coming out of the parking lots, coming down Snow Street, coming down Nod Street, and right down to the lowest point, which is Moran Square. But I wanted to point that out to you, Councilor, so you know that one time there used to be all kinds of houses up there, and we made parking lots up there.
Well, if I may just quick note, the roofs collect water as well.
Oh, yeah, I know that.
So.
But the parking lots collect more.
It is true that the increase in impervious area leads to additional flooding issues. So if there's a difference between when those lots had houses on them with potentially lawns and whatnot and versus just entirely paved parking areas, it could be contributing to the increase in flooding there. But that's one of the things that we'll look at through this grant effort is those sources of flooding, what can be done to mitigate those.
Okay. I make a motion we accept.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to accept 25023. If there are no objections, I'll take this under unanimous consent. Seeing none, it passes. Thank you, Commissioner. 25123, in order that the City of Fitchburg hereby appropriates $550,000 from the following accounts to acquire the parcel of land at 580 John Fitch Highway, Fitchburg. This property has strategic importance to the redesign of the intersection of John Fitch Highway and Lunenburg Street and the reconfiguration of the adjacent portion of John Fitch Highway. Reserved for other municipal purposes, capital expenses, $245,550. Receipts reserved for appropriation, bond premiums reserved, $245,000, and city property sold, $59,450. Director Murphy.
Good evening, Chair DiNatale and councilors. I know this is a challenging time to be asking for this much money, but I do think this is of strategic importance. While this particular property is vacant and for sale, it is an opportunity for us to take the property and reconstruct in the future that intersection, but also it has some strategic importance in order for us to get that whole intersection and part of that corridor onto the Transportation Improvement Program and have the state actually pay for the improvements that would happen in the future. So one of the challenges that, as I understand it, to getting this section of John Fitch Highway onto the tip is there's a couple of plazas that have parking spaces where the customers will back out into John Fitch Highway. The state doesn't allow that, so as long as that is happening, we can't get that section on the tip. Having this property, taking this property and then being able to demolish it and create some compensatory parking for those businesses and then telling them that they can no longer have their customers do that would then allow us to design something that satisfies the state requirements and get it on the tip.
Councilor Boschman.
First of all, I want to say thank you very much. A lot of us, I talked to many councilors, they all agree with us, with you. We're all in favor. We were in favor when back in the summer, early summer.
Yeah.
I talked to a lot of councilors here about this, so we're all in favor. So I'm not going to vote against it. I'm a firm believer that, and I hope Nick's listening, I'm a firm believer that if we do John Fitch Highway right, we can improve traffic immensely down there. We also can improve retail sales and commercial area down there if we do this right. And I'm hoping that we do it right and we're not afraid to say we're taking curb cuts and this is the way it's going to be because we have to if we want to improve. I'm also in favor of what you said, but I went to the assessor's office today and I'll pass this out to you. But when we take this piece of land, we buy it, if the council approves it, which I hope they will because it's the smartest thing we can do as a city. We can take away the guy's pocket in the front and help that guy to the right of right next to Mighty. And if we take his pocket spaces, he's got 10 because I was down there today and I took pictures. And give Mighty 30 feet of the land we're taking, and to swap even so he can take the frontage and put the parking on that side. I get drawings. You want to see them?
I've seen them.
You did?
Yep.
So I'll show you, Councilor.
Pass them along.
Yeah. They drew some lines for me so you can see. And I'll give them to you, Liz.
Oh, perfect.
I'll
Thank you.
give this thing. Oh, you already got them?
No, I said thank you. I'd like to get them.
I want to make one thing. I'm all in favor, but I'm not giving nothing away. We're paying a lot of money. I think we're paying a lot of money. So I'm not giving nothing away. I'll swap land for land. We give them 30 or 40 feet. What we're not going to give them, if they get 75 feet, we're not going to give them that. If he wants the extra 25 or 40 feet, then he pays fair market value. Nothing's given away. I want to make it clear because I won't support it. We're going to say, we'll give it to him. I want to get paid. I'll give him the 30 feet that he allows that he's losing on one side of the building to the other side of the building for his parking. But if he wants more, then he should pay. And I think the man over there on the right will agree with me because he's a realtor. So I'm all in favor of it, hoping this council goes 100% behind us. I think it's one of the greatest things your father's done. I'm glad the planning board listened to the council when we called you. I hope we had made a decision about this back in, when did we call it, Andy? I kept on bugging you about it.
It was probably June.
In June, when it was going up for sale. So I want to say thank you, and I would say I love you, but you can't say that.
Thank you.
But thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I appreciate.
Just so the public knows what we're talking about here, the 580 John Fitch Highway is that property right on the corner of Lunenburg and John Fitch across from Walgreens, where the former Dunkin' Donuts was, that since has relocated down by where Comfort Home is and past the McDonald's on the opposite end of John Fitch. So it's that now empty space that we're talking about right on that corner.
Correct.
Councilor Van Hazinga.
Thank you. So just to provide some background and context to the viewers on this issue, this intersection of Lunenburg and John Fitch is one of the toughest intersections we have in the city. It's perpetually one of the highest crash points in the city, and I believe the state as well, or at least this region. Traffic regularly backs up down John Fitch Highway to the south, and I've gone through the intersection of John Fitch in summer only to have immediately back up at Carol's Dairy Bar from traffic all the way from this intersection. So it's something we do have to address. We've been investing funds in resiliency studies for the John Fitch corridor to make significant improvements there, and we really need to include this intersection to make progress on that, our main commercial area of the city. And this property has been an obstacle because it's right at the corner. There's so much traffic queuing at the intersections there. There's problems with access. A development plan at that intersection, at that building or site rather, was denied by the planning board because of issues with, or it was withdrawn because of issues with access. So it's something we had an opportunity with Dunkin' Donuts moving to a new location, the property being marketed for sale, that this is the time to do it. And I think in your letter you've mentioned that it's vacant now, even though it's a tough time financially with a limited free cash on hand that we're having to be creative to find some funds to do this. It gets more expensive if there's a tenant in the building.
That's correct.
And as I understand it, you've negotiated sort of it's a taking, but it's a friendly taking, as it were, with the property owner. So there's no ill will here. We have the broker here, and it's a negotiated price. It's not cheap, but it's based on what someone else is willing to pay for the property. So that's what it's worth, and the property owner is entitled to fair compensation. So I strongly encourage the city to take this opportunity to move one step forward to resolving some issues, because this gives us the potential, like you've mentioned, to address the parking issue for the plaza a couple properties down that backs out. It's also raised the possibility of could we incorporate an additional turn lane to alleviate some traffic flow onto Lunenburg. There's a whole bunch of possibilities, but it all starts with gaining control of this parcel. And this is really, even though it's kind of tough, we got to figure out how to do it. It's a step we got to take, and now's the time to do it, because it will only be harder in the future. So, thank you.
Councilor Squalia.
Thank you. So I like this idea because there's numerous problems with this intersection. About 15 years ago or so, I think MassDOT shifted the lanes to allow trucks to turn left from Lunenburg Street onto John Fitch, which eliminated that kind of right turn lane going from John Fitch to Lunenburg, which, now that we've seen huge backups, like Councilor Van Hazinga mentioned, all the way to Carol's Dairy Bar. So it was like 2018, 2019, myself, Councilor Walsh, and Fleming put in a petition to add a turn lane back in there, and that was approved by the council. So this has been a long time that we've been talking about this, but the other part of the puzzle is that we can't get funding for these state route improvements because of the backing out from those two strip malls, right? It's the Meineke and the mall with Thumbs Up and Beatty's Mediterranean.
Yes.
So by eliminating the old Dunkin' Donuts and allowing us to have that right turn lane, we can also relocate some of that backup, parking to that lot. It seems like it's a little far away. How are we negotiating that?
I need to leave up to the engineers. I am not the person to tell to really know how that intersection is going to be redesigned. I have this idea in my head that it'd be great to have a rotary there. I think it's big enough, but I don't know if that's the way to go. That's not a decision that I'll make. Nick and his team, I'm sure, will be the ones to vet that out.
Right, the parking, the second issue really is the question about how are we relocating that parking for those existing businesses so that we qualify for the tip improvements to do a roundabout or a turn lane or whatever it is.
Correct. So the details are still yet to be determined, but what I understand, we'd be telling the property owners no more backing out. Maybe they can have a few parallel spaces there. And then Meineke, it's very easy to think about, well, this is just right next to it, so they can have the parking.
So really it's the Beatties one.
So it's somewhere in between, whether it's a land swap or whether it's just, hey, your customers are going to be able to park and they're going to have to walk a little bit to go there. But at least we'll be able to offer some compensatory parking for them.
Right, and we're talking millions of potential dollars for improvement for all the businesses there on John Fitch, and really all the residents up Lunenburg Street and beyond.
Yeah. I think with this piece and the work we're already doing for the rest of John Fitch Highway, we have the potential to really transform this whole strip and this intersection. It could be game-changing.
And with traffic being able to move through John Fitch instead of knowing that you're going to be sitting there for 15 minutes, I think that'll really improve the business environment on the entire line of John Fitch too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep, it's great. It's a great idea. Now, with the demo of the building, is that included in this price?
That is not.
And we expect that the city will have to demo this building with future funds, or we'll be able to keep...
CBG funds.
Well, that could be a source, CDBG. So we could apply for that. We could be looking for free cash in the future. I will certainly have a conversation about whether or not the demolition of this could be a part of the what we asked for the state, but I don't know if that's eligible. I don't know if you have a sense of whether or not demoing the building would be eligible. Yeah, but we can find that out. Okay.
So potentially, the demo of the building could be included in a transportation improvement plan, but do we need to demo the building first for that compensatory storage?
I would think so. I would think in order to provide the alternate parking, that we'd need to demolish the building to provide that.
And an approximate cost to demolish the building is maybe $80,000?
Yeah, I would expect that it would be under 100, but it's been a couple years now since, well, except for the emergency demo that we had to do not too long ago. It's been a few years now that we haven't done any real demo, so my sense of what that cost isn't as good as it was a few years ago. But yeah, I would say for one building, we'd be hard pressed to spend more than $100,000 on it.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Zarella.
Thank you. So what I'm hearing and what I just want to briefly emphasize for the public is the exact direction that this project will go in is as yet undetermined and doesn't really need to be determined yet, because the one thing we do know is that any route we take with this, any path we choose, starts with acquiring this parcel. So I'm entirely in favor, and honestly, I don't need to know all the details right now. All I need to know is exactly that regardless of how we do the demo, where we do the parking, what the intersection's going to look like in the future, none of it happens without acquiring this parcel. And it needs to happen. So, full steam ahead.
And just to further explain what Councilor Van Hazinga mentioned with this is the time to do it, and it would cost us additional funds if we didn't do it now. We'd have an obligation to relocate any tenant if we took this through eminent domain or friendly eminent domain. So we while it's vacant, is the time to do it.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Council Boschman.
The other thing I want to say, too, I do want to say thank you to your father, Mayor Di Natale, because if it wasn't for him, he had an input on this, too. He could have said no, but he didn't. He was all in favor. I got to give credit where credit's due, too, because he did say it. So I want to say thank you to him from the councilors and you for pushing it. And some of the other councilors that I called up and bugged him about it, and I bugged you a lot about it. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I'll give you the plan for the parking, so you won't have to give nothing away. There's nothing given away any longer.
Yeah, I'd just like to clarify for the public kind of the overall strategy as far as the projects that are in the works and future projects for this corridor. So right now, we're in the process of designing improvements for John Fitch between Lunenburg Street and Summer Street, but it does not include the intersections at both ends. A large part of the reason for that is cost. Right now, the project is estimated at roughly $10 or $11 million, and it's on the Transportation Improvement Program for the year 2028. If we were to add that intersection at Lunenburg Street, it would add millions of dollars to the cost and probably another 5 to 6 years to the timeline there. So we're treating that as its own separate animal, so to speak, its own separate project. And the Dunkin' Donuts parcel was one of the obstacles in moving forward with that project in particular. The project that we're working on right now, which is in between the two intersections, might change a little bit because now if we do acquire this parcel and move forward with this, we'll have the ability to add that right turn lane in there like we used to have. But we can't significantly alter the signalization of that intersection without opening that can of worms, adding that millions of dollars to the cost, adding to the timeline. So we're trying to treat it as that second project and move towards a separate TIP project for just that intersection. And that will probably include replacement of that bridge on Lunenburg Street, the signalization, reconfiguring the intersection geometry as a whole, and then potentially, other improvements there. Maybe a roundabout as a consideration, but that would be determined through that separate design process. So I just want to clarify that the project that we're working on now is not necessarily going to solve the intersection problem. It's going to focus on that stretch in between Summer Street and Lunenburg Street. But at the same time, we're working towards the development of a project for the intersection in particular, with this Dunkin' Donuts property being kind of a key piece.
The $10, $11 million cost, 2028, is that a done deal? Are we just waiting for the state to give us the money and you're thinking it's 2028, or they're telling us it's 2028? Or
Right now, it's on the tip for 2028, so long as we meet certain milestones that are set by the state and follow their design process.
what are the risks to us not following that? Are there any?
Not really. As long as we follow the design process that we've kind of laid out and stick to a certain schedule, I don't see any problems with achieving that goal. We've already talked to Market Basket. We've already talked to the owners of the Cinema World parking lot. Those were two of the main hurdles that DOT kind of tasked us with looking at. So we're already there. We're just about complete with the 25% comment resolutions and whatnot. So as soon as we're done with that, we'll get into the 75% and keep advancing that design.
So this intersection will be treated as a separate project
Correct.
that will have to go through the process from scratch.
Correct.
Like the middle section has already gone through.
Correct.
So we're thinking probably not for another decade on that one.
Potentially. There's other ways to get these types of projects done without using TIP funding, and that's certainly something we can explore with the state. So the section of John Fitch that we're working on right now in between the two intersections is not owned by the state whatsoever. That intersection is. The signals are theirs. Right. Lunenburg Street is theirs. So there's a potential there that DOT takes on the project instead of us taking it on and going through the TIP project. And as Councilor Squalia mentioned, a number of years ago, there was a project on the TIP for this particular intersection, and it dropped off and was canceled because of the Dunkin' Donuts property on the corner with the curb cuts. It was just too convoluted of an intersection for the state to deal with. And then also these strip malls that we're talking about with the perpendicular parking backing directly out into traffic.
It sounds like we are better positioned for DOT to do that job now.
Correct.
With not only this taking, but what we're doing in the middle. It all connects.
So the middle section solves the parking spaces with traffic, people parking there backing directly out into traffic. So the goal with this project is to close up those curb cuts, as Liz mentioned, offer some parallel parking on the back side of the sidewalk there in front of those businesses. It is going to reduce the parking available to those businesses, but the goal with this Dunkin' Donuts property is to offer that compensatory parking area.
And that bridge needs to be replaced anyway, right? Is that bridge in
does.
rough shape? It does
It's in
look like
rough
it's in
shape.
rough shape, yeah.
There's a couple issues out there. There's a drain line on Lunenburg Street from Bowtell Street down that's significantly undersized. That bridge is old and decaying. The signals are all aging. You've got issues with that right turn lane. So there's a number of things that need to be solved with the next project there. And I also wanted to add one other thing that Solicitor Pusateri brought up. So right now that Dunkin' Donuts parcel holds an easement on the adjacent muffler shop parcel, with the stipulation that easement is only valid for the purposes of allowing the operation of a drive-up window. So because the city's potentially going to be acquiring that property, demolishing that building, there'll be no drive-through window there anymore. That easement is essentially null and void, and the city would be giving, or the property owner would be giving up that easement. So that frees up a significant chunk of that adjacent parcel for the purposes of parking for the muffler shop. So just by canceling that easement, the muffler shop itself is gaining the ability to utilize that space again.
And this 10 to 11 million for the middle section, does that also encompass paving?
Oh, big time.
Okay,
I mean,
so-
it's full reconstruction of the roadways, sidewalks,
So
lighting,
all of John
everything.
Fitch is slated to be fully reconstructed, hopefully in 2028.
That stretch.
That's
I mean,
the-
John
yeah,
Fitch
right.
goes all the way out to Mechanic Street, but that stretch,
That stretch from Summer to Lunenburg?
correct.
And then this would extend that.
Yep.
And so I'm pointing that out because it was mentioned earlier about a funding source for demolition. Whether it comes from CDBG, which, I mean, we probably don't have any idea what that facility is going to cost to demolish. Knowing our CDBG funds, I'm thinking it's going to be rough to subsidize that for $200,000, let's say. That's like 20% of your CDBG budget.
That's correct. It would
so-
be, but I don't think it would be, I think it would be 100,000.
Okay.
maybe, but
I mean,
yeah,
even 100,000
for one
is
building.
a big chunk out of CDBG, because we know we're not getting any extra from the feds on that. So where I'm going with this is, any concerns about free cash availability for next year? The residents have to understand that if that's the route that we choose to go in, there is a strategic reason for why that is a good candidate for free cash, because it's complementing not only the $10 or $11 million of state funding, but what would this corner project be? I mean, I know we're really early, but let's just say it's $5 million. I don't know, $10 million, I don't know. Let's say it's $5 million. You're talking a $16 million worth of infrastructure improvements and reconstruction of that whole area that could potentially be held up for $100,000 of free cash. The investment on the city side to complement 15, 16, 17, even $20 million in state money, you can't pass that up. And not to mention that 100,000, you can argue, is for paving. It's applying to that whole reconstructive effort. So $100,000 for complementing 20 million, it would sound like a very no-brainer candidate for that pool of money once it's certified, in my opinion.
I do also want to mention the idea of acquiring this parcel is relatively new to the whole design process that we've already laid out for that section between Summer and Lunenburg. So after we're sure about this, we'll go back to our design team. It's our engineering consultant, Fuss O'Neill. Let them know that we're acquiring this parcel and seeing what can be done to incorporate that into that project that's in the works right now and slated to be constructed in 2028. There's potentially some work that can be included in that project. Maybe we can add that right turn lane. Maybe we can get the building demolished as part of that project. I'm not sure, but certainly we'll explore that potential.
Yeah.
I don't think, as I mentioned earlier, we're treating that intersection work at Lunenburg Street as a separate project because we don't want to change the signals, and it would create too much for this one project, and it would make it essentially a no-go for the state.
The fact that the state's already committing 10 to 11 million for the middle section, and the fact that they had that intersection on their radar previously, means they want to do it.
Yeah.
There's just some hurdles. So between that, give or take $100,000, plus this 550, that's a city investment of 650. 650 to, I would lump in the 10 or 11 million already secured for 2020. I would just say that it complement 650 to prop and complement 15 to 20 million in state investment. That's how I look at this. We're putting in 650,000 potentially, and we're getting back 20 million of our tax dollars. I'm a finance by trade. That's an ROI that is in the hundreds and hundreds of percent, which would tell me it's a no-brainer that we do this, because I don't know when we would ever get another opportunity like this either. I mean, this has been decades, if not a century in the making. So it's either now is the time to do it, or we let it because not doing that intersection, to me, does not make sense doing great, we do the middle, but what about the ends? I mean, let's do it all, and let's not be a roadblock to that.
Yeah, and just for the sake of the public's education, counselors, et cetera, the way we're treating John Fitch Highway long-term is kind of a phased approach. So we're starting with the section between Summer and Lunenburg. Then the goal is to do the intersection. Then the goal would be to do that next stretch between Lunenburg Street and, say, North Street. Right now, we're also working on a design for intersection improvements at North Street and John Fitch Highway. So that would be another project. And then by the time we're finished there, then you're looking at that stretch between North Street and Mechanic and Ringe Road. And that roundabout there is probably going to be in need of a refresh right about that time. So we're kind of taking it segment by segment ultimately to get John Fitch Highway completely reconstructed end to end.
Councilor Van Hazen?
Yeah, just a quick note on demolition costs. I would be shocked if the cost isn't substantially below $100,000. I know that number's been thrown out, but it's a relatively small single-story building on a pad, modern construction, so there's probably not any abatement. My thought would be relatively cheap. I don't know what the complications of doing it as a public contract would add to that, but it shouldn't be a very heavy lift financially. But I just want to touch on the long-term planning of the improvements of John Fitch Highway. I very much appreciate that there's a long-term plan, like you just mentioned, these stages to go through. And your first mention of this middle section waiting until 2028, it can be kind of frustrating to think that this 4 or 5 years we have to wait before we can start. But there is such a substantial amount of work that has to be done before we actually get those TIP funds to do the construction. I know we had a very large ARPA allocation for this property, or the project rather, and we've had other grant funds. Do you have an idea of what we're spending on just doing this design work and this pre-construction work before we get the TIP money?
So the design work that's underway, the initial piece was funded through the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Grant Program, and that was approximately a $275,000 effort. It was grant funded, but there was a cash match and in-kind match portion that the city had to kick in. I don't recall what the number there is. The number $75,000 roughly sticks in my mind for some reason, but that was a few years ago. So that was to get the 25% design completed. With the American Rescue Plan Act funds, the city kicked in $1.2 million roughly to take it from that 25% design through PS&E, so plan, specs, and estimate, which is when you basically hand it over to the state for construction. So in total, so far, we're talking roughly $1.5 million for that stretch. On the intersection with North John Fitch Highway, Pearl Hill Road, that was also funded through the American Rescue Plan Act, and I believe that was right around $1 million for the overall design. I could be way off with that.
And this is just for the design and the engineering. This isn't even for the construction.
Correct.
So these projects are so complicated and so expensive that it takes such a long term to get the money together just to know what we're going to do, and then more millions, $10, $11 million more just to do the construction. So it's something that I greatly appreciate the long-term strategic planning that is going into this to keep these projects moving, because it's not something we can do right away, that we have to do the homework, get to it while we're doing the homework for the next stage, and keep moving along. So I think it's great that we're paying attention to this, and we're making sure that we're moving forward, because this is an important corridor in our city. Right. It's a main transportation route, north-south, through the east side of the city. It's our biggest commercial area in the city. So it is really important, and I'm glad that we're putting in the time to make sure we have a long-term strategic vision and a way to get it done.
Right, and the design work for other areas of the city isn't necessarily quite as expensive or as thorough as this, because it is a major commercial thoroughfare through the city, and it's in such a not bad condition, but a condition that's not ideal to the development that we want to see. It warrants a full reconstruction. Geometry changes, addition of additional lighting, addition of additional pathways for pedestrians and bikers. And it warrants that extra investment that we're kind of moving forward with right now. And it's also extremely expensive to follow Mass DOT's process to get projects funded through the TIP. And that's why you're seeing relatively large design numbers being thrown around for this.
It's the worst possible scenario to invest money in doing it and then being dropped because we don't have control of a necessary parcel or something like that. So that's great that we're planning ahead to make sure that when we move to that next stage of that intersection, we have all our ducks aligned, and it aligns with our previous work in the middle section of that John Fitch Highway.
Right.
All right.
Council Boschman.
I get one other question. I keep on saying, I hope we do it right. I'm also hoping that by improving John Fitch Highway, we can eliminate a lot of the traffic that's using Bartell Street as a substitute from the highway to go back onto the highway, so the residents can have peace of mind and slow down traffic up there, and they can go through this. This is why I keep on saying we have to do this thing right, John Fitch Highway, so we can take a lot of the traffic that goes through Bartell, because my sister at one time lived there, and that was the biggest complaint they had. Well, you heard Bet Walsh and Derek Cruz say the same thing. Councilor Cruz and Bet Walsh used to say the same thing. The traffic flies through there because it's an easy way to get to the other side faster than what you can do on John Fitch Highway. So I'm going to be watching, all hands on deck on this thing here. And I'm hoping that it's a proper design so you can handle the flow of traffic, so we can solve a problem on Bartell Street, improve it better down there so we can improve it so we can get more residential and commercial sales down there. And I think it could be done, and I look very much forward to it. And there'll be no land given for free. I'll make that very clear. There's nothing free in life, and the city of Pittsburgh is paying their fair share in this house, like you said. And if you look at this plan, it'll work, and he'll get his parking spaces, Mighty. The other guy, you won't even need to have parallel parking in the front because you'll have enough parking on the side. I figured it out down there, uses their spaces, and it'll work. So nothing's given for free. I want to make it very clear. Nothing. Because I'm tired of paying. The taxpayers are tired of paying. And it's nice to be nice, but we don't have a lot of money. Let's start facing the facts. And somebody is paying. Like I told Steve, I'm telling you, somebody's paying. And I don't want to pay no more because I want to give it to my kids. Thank you.
I do also want to mention, as part of that Mass DOT kind of design process that they require, there will be design public hearings for this project at some point. Once those dates are firmed up, we'll definitely push the message out to constituents. I would encourage anyone interested to attend once those dates are announced.
Oh, I'll be there.
Motion to approve 25123.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve 25123. There are no objections. We'll take this on unanimous consent. Seeing none, it passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lastly, 25223, order that the City of Fitchburg hereby appropriates $75,245 from reserve for other municipal purposes capital expenses to begin an architectural assessment of existing conditions at the Forest Hill Abbey Mausoleum at Forest Hill Cemetery. The assessment will facilitate a more thorough and complete design of repairs on part of the selected design firm. Mr. Erickson.
Yes, so if you recall, myself, along with Judy Perla from the Cemetery Trustees, made a presentation to City Council a number of months ago about the condition of the mausoleum at Forest Hill Cemetery. Over the years, it's fallen into disrepair. There's been roof leaks that have occurred since the 70s that have caused some serious damage to the inside of the building. So we're at a point now where it needs to be fully restored. So if you recall, we recently asked for an appropriation of $100,000 to hire an owner's project manager. Since it is building work, per MGL, we need to hire an owner's project manager as our first step. So we did that. We hired a company called Answer Advisory, and they assisted us with putting together an RFQ process for a designer, an architect, to move forward with the design of the repairs. So we've gone through that process, we've selected a designer, and we've gotten their cost proposal. And the first step in that cost proposal is an assessment of existing conditions to figure out what the problems are and what the designs needs to address. So I'm here before you tonight to ask for an appropriation of $75,000, $75,245 to begin that first phase of the design, which is that existing conditions assessment. So overall, we anticipate the design effort to cost approximately $400,000. And as I mentioned, this is essentially task one in that design.
So I'll just start by saying that the last appropriation we made was $100,000, if I recall. And I think we said at that time when we voted as a committee and as a council to appropriate it, that once we start down that path, I feel as if we have now committed ourselves to getting to the point of right before we construct or do the actual work. Get everything situated design-wise, cost-wise, and then we'll have to worry about the big number at the end in terms of whether we completely redo it, what have you. But to get to that point, we had to start with that $100,000. Now this is the next phase. Where I'm going with this is the fact that we've already began the $100,000 of taxpayer dollars. I am inclined to support this because why would I have supported the $100,000 and not keep going? When we get to the point where we're going to have to do actual construction, boots on the ground, is where we're going to have to figure out, is it going to be funded through a bond, free cash, what have you, but we got to get to that point first, and I feel like this council is, in my opinion, is already committed to getting to that point by already putting in $100,000. So I will support this to continue this process, because to not support this, in my opinion, means we flushed $100,000 down the drain. And so I feel like we've already committed long-term to this project up to the point of construction at the very least. So that's how I feel about this. Councilor Zarella.
Thank you. I'm just going to briefly reiterate what I said the last time this was in front of us, which is this what I would like to see the city spending this kind of money on? No, it's certainly not the kind of thing that's going to make the biggest impact to people's lives in the day-to-day terms. But for better or for worse, we made a commitment as a city to the families that have their loved ones interred there, and we need to live up to that commitment. So I hope that we can do it in a cost-effective manner. It's, again, I wish we could be putting this money towards something else and not having to make these repairs, but we made a commitment. and we need to honor that commitment. People who have their loved ones in that mausoleum expect and deserve a structure in good repair to go and visit and pay their respects. So I will support this, and I will support whatever it turns out to cost in the future, with the hope, fingers crossed, that it won't be, too heavy a lift for our budget.
Just another comment on that, too, is this is one of those orders, like President Zarella said, where of all the things in this city we need to do, DPW related, this is probably at the bottom. And that's not to mean disrespect to the Library Board of Trustees, the Public Burial Grounds trustees, or our buried dead and the families. But I recall vividly, as we all recall every day, the complaints we get about infrastructure conditions and building conditions. And people ask that storied question, where's the money going? This is one of those instances that always gets me frustrated. Like my colleague from Ward 2 will say, we have so many sidewalks we have to fix. The point I try to make to people is it's not a question of we don't have the money. It's the prioritization of that money, but also the status of what each individual request requires of our attention. We had to repair Arbor Way Dam, or the Arbor Way
walls.
Walls. That was $600,000+.
$750.
It became $750, but we had a free cash request for $600,000. And we said the same, it's like, it's kind of out of sight. But there's $600,000 that we had to just put towards that. Didn't have a choice, really. In this case, I worked at the cemetery 20 years ago. The mausoleum was a disaster then. We've already had a presentation from you and the trustees at the last meeting when we did the $100,000 about what this mausoleum will require, why it's beyond regular repairs. And that's why I said earlier we made that commitment with the $100,000. But if someone's watching this meeting tonight, they will understandably say, 75 grand for this, and then potentially 400,000 and more. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is what it takes when you run a city. There are things that come up in our purview that we don't expect, that we would love to say no and divert, but we can't let the building collapse.
Right.
So this is one of those areas where, yeah, I wish we could put this money towards something that touches everybody, if you will. It's the same thing that happens when we have a sewer project, or people don't appreciate the sewer systems when they flush that toilet. They don't understand what goes on after that. But my point is that while this is not a priority to most taxpayers or even to most counselors, in this instance, it's not about a priority. It's almost borderline an emergency at this point. The building is in a state of failure. And chalk it up to the sins of the past. As I said, 20 years ago, it was in bad shape. This is a building that should have been fixed and addressed 50 years ago. Wasn't. And now it falls on our shoulders as counselors to address it and not kick the can down the road like our predecessors have done. And so we have money. It's just these things come up. We don't have a lockbox that says there's $5 million for road work and it can't be used for anything else. When is the free cash getting certified? Do we have any idea?
Don't.
Is it any week?
No, it'll be within the next couple months.
So in the next couple of months, we will have a free cash number. I'm going to guess it's going to be in the area of $5 million. And I said this during the campaign season. That $5 million is largely already spoken for before anyone sits down. So this is what happens.
I agree with you. I'd much rather take the estimated, $2 to $3 million that this is ultimately going to cost overall and put it into roads, sidewalks, bridges, you name it, we could use this money for it. But as you mentioned, we're getting towards crisis mode with this building in particular, Because if this building fails, then we have to figure out what to do with all the people that are interred there. And then it's figuring out how to notify those families, dealing with the inevitable lawsuits of not being able to upkeep this building, and figuring out all the difficulties associated with that. So we want to take care of this before we get to that point where, you know, it's an absolute financial burden on the city beyond just $2.5 million.
This project is a prime example. It's a microcosm of the city's building management practices going back decades and decades ago. This is just one more example of where,
Hindsight being 2020, you know,
Right.
I'd like to go back to 1918 when they built this and
Yep.
say, please, just don't do this.
right.
Figure something
Of
else
course,
out.
it's easy to
But-
play Monday morning quarterback, but my statements are for the benefit of the residents watching this and who will watch this, so that they understand that in instances like this that we did not ask for or plan for, we cannot ignore it anymore.
Right.
And that's where your money is going, to emergencies like this, irrespective of who's to blame. And it's already been stated, we can't reinter these people. We can't even locate some family. Maybe there's no it is a colossal undertaking, in some cases impossible to do. And so that building's got to stay, and that building's got to be fixed. And we're going to have to just eat it. And I don't want it to be lost on anybody. I'm not saying I don't care about the well-being and care of that facility or the people in it. I think it's embarrassing that we've let it go that long. It's not honoring our deceased. So out of respect to them, their families, and to the city's image, because that doesn't look good on the city. The time is now to do it, but I'm not patting myself on the back or the mayor's or anybody else's. It's not a question of the time is now. Time's run out.
It should have been done in the 70s, really.
Yes. Yep.
It would have been a heck of a lot
So
cheaper.
I will support this, and I will support any future effort to obtain the funding to do this, and, you know, take our licks where we will by the public if we have to, but this is one of those we don't have a choice options. I mean, we do have a choice. We let it collapse. And then I don't think that's a good image for any of us in office, to have a building with several deceased there collapsing when we could have done something about it, as painful as it is.
Right.
Council Boschman?
I kind of feel kind of different, to be honest with you. Listen, how many bodies do we have in there?
I don't know entirely off the top of my head. I think it's roughly 600 something.
600 bodies in that place?
I believe so. I could be totally wrong. I wish I had Judy or Jacqueline with me tonight, but
Now, if we have, we fix it up, we're going to spend anywhere between $2 to $4 million. This is what I recall the last time we talked, when you came in front of us,
Yeah.
approximately of 2 to 4. Am I right, Council?
so the design effort is estimated to be $400,000.
Right.
Plus, you've got the $100,000 that we've already secured for the owner's project manager, and then construction cost estimates are anywhere between 2 and 3, I would guess.
The original estimates were 2 to 4 million.
2 to 4. Now, we're fixing it up. Is that place going to be able to take any more bodies when somebody passes away?
There are vacancies there, yes, correct.
Approximately how many?
I would say roughly 1 to 200. Again, I can get you those exact numbers, but I don't have them off the top of my head.
All right.
Just a guess.
So that's okay. Are we going to, so that's perpetual care. Am I right or wrong on that? Am I right on where people, they pay so much and they're all set for life? Am I
Yeah,
right?
anyone that's interred at a public burial ground pays into a perpetual care fund, correct.
Okay. I don't know if you know, the commissioner would probably know. Do we charge extra because your wages don't stay the same? My wages don't stay the same. His doesn't stay the same. So we're basing, if I die today, you know, it costs you $60,000 to hire a guy to cut the grass. Well, 10 years from now, that $60,000 is no longer 60, it's $90,000, not counting health care and benefits.
Right.
$90,000. Are we going up with times on these potential care places where you're adding more? I know I look around some of the cemeteries, and they just don't have the funds because people are not being buried, they're being cremated, and they spread their ashes, so they don't make any money on that way.
So there's a rate sheet, and those rates are set by the cemetery trustees. And every couple of years, the cemetery superintendent and the trustees look at that rate sheet and evaluate where they're at and where they should be, potentially adjusting some of those rates. They recently underwent that effort, and I would expect to see a proposal before City Council to accept and adopt those rates, those new rates that are being proposed in the very near future. I believe they made some comparisons to other cities and towns like Leominster and Worcester, et cetera. I do want to note that there's been a very large demand placed on Forest Hill Cemetery in particular, one, because of COVID, but two, because it's so well cared for compared to the cemeteries in this area. I don't want to throw any other names out there, but there's only a few other cemeteries. But people are choosing to not bury their dead at those cemeteries and instead come to Forest Hill because of how well it's managed, how well it's upkept. And I think this mausoleum is really the only exception there. Forest Hill has been very well cared for over the years, and it's a testament to the hard work of cemetery trustees and our cemetery superintendent.
Well, I just wanted to point out that back in 2014, I used to walk around the outskirts. I used to see part of the roof flapping. Remember, I brought it up numerous times at council meetings?
I saw it flapping when I worked there 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I asked, and they said it would get done, and they said they hired a contract. My problem is, why aren't we going after these people that they do the work, and then we don't go after them after that, and the work is shabby. We pay top dollar, the state makes us pay prevailing wages, or whatever, to the highest bidder, and they do shabby work, and we can't get them back to repair their shabby work. I don't understand it.
Counselor, I can address that. The repairs that were done at the mausoleum were wrong for that building. And they were done at a time, and the warranty is over for that. Those repairs have caused more damage to the building than if they weren't done. So this process will reverse all the poor maintenance that had been done to the building and prevent it from decaying any further, and it will provide us with a 100-year plan on this building moving forward.
Is that man going to be overseeing this project too? Is he going to be involved quite a bit, because that's what we're paying him for?
Yeah. So Russ has worked with the owner's project manager to coordinate the RFQ process to bring the architect designer on board, and he's been an integral part in this so far, and I anticipate it'll continue throughout the duration of the project.
And just as a sidebar, I was hired for this purpose. This is the tip of the iceberg for the buildings in Fitchburg. We've got a number of buildings in failure that need to be looked at, and this is just the first one we're going to attack.
All right. I yield the floor. I'll support it, but I just want to make it clear, we're not rich. I mean, I know this one of the cemeteries you're talking about because I said the same thing, and that's where I'm going to be going when I pass away, but I'm not going to die because God lost my number. So I just want to say that too. But anyway.
As a sidebar to the council, whenever I do something, I fix 3 problems with one move, and it's very economical to do it that way. We're not going to fix things half, you know what I mean? We're going to do it right the first time. We're not going to go back and fix it a second time. We're going to fix things right. It might cost a little more the first time, but you won't ever have to look at it again for 100 years.
That's what I like to hear.
Motion to approve 25223.
Second. Motion made and seconded to approve 25223. If there are no objections to the approval, I'll take this under unanimous consent. Seeing none, it passes.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Council.
gentlemen.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Take it.
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.